Okay, happy Erev Pesach to everybody. Um, we are going to be starting chapter 17, which is in a way a little bit of a continuation from last chapter. We thought that last chapter was really, deep and intellectual. This chapter is actually going to crystallize the concepts and make them much more practical. Okay, so we know from last chapter and from the previous chapter that we've studied, I actually don't, oh, I know what's wrong here. 1 second. For some reason, Panina, you're showing up as a speaker. Okay, got it. Okay. We know, based on the previous chapter and the previous chapters that we've learned in Tanya, we know that there are two types of service of Hashem that the Beinoni completes. One type is love and a fear of God based on understanding, which then produces a complete emotion. So based on your understanding, your studies, your reflection, you then produce the emotions of love and fear, which are able to be complete emotions, and they thereby are the wings which carry your mitzvahs upwards to the heavenly spheres. That's one type of love and fear and service of Hashem, of a Beinoni. The second type is if the seichel, if your intellect is not enough. This is what we discussed last week. It is not enough for various reasons. Maybe the source of your neshama, maybe your intellectual capacity, whatever the reason may be, it's not even important what the reason is, but it's not enough to produce emotion. However, it creates a tvuna, a conviction, a strong conviction, which then the Alter Rebbe tells us, because of Hashem's help, also can serve as wings for your mitzvahs, which carry your mitzvahs, your fulfillment of the commandments to the heavenly spheres. Now, this concept of tvuna, which we discussed last week, this concept of having a strong conviction, will help us to understand the verse on which Tanya is based. In actual fact, it's not in any chapter of Tanya, but it's on the title page of Tanya. That Tanya is based on the verse which Moshe Rabbeinu told the nation of Israel, which is that Torah and mitzvahs, the fulfillment of Torah and mitzvahs, are actually easy and within your reach to fulfill. And the actual verse that he used was Kikarev elecha hadavar me'oid b'ficha u'bilvavcha la'asoisoi. It is very, very close to you. Me'oid, Tanya uses the word me'oid, the Chumash uses the word me'oid. It's very, very attainable, very close to you, in your mouth, in your heart, and in your deeds. Now, actually, in this chapter, it's very interesting because the Alter Rebbe really validates our experience. And the Alter Rebbe says that it doesn't seem to be true, this verse, because it's not so easy. It doesn't always seem to be easy to change one's heart's desires for worldly pleasures to a sincere love of Hashem, correct? And this pasuk essentially means that it's easy to fulfill Torah mitzvahs with all three garments of the soul. We know that the soul has three garments or expressions: thought, speech, and action. And this is what this pasuk, or what Moshe Rabbeinu was telling the nation of Israel, essentially means. It's easy for you to fulfill Torah mitzvahs through the expression of your soul. But the Alter Rebbe actually validates our experience. If you have a chance and you look into the words of the chapter, you will see that the Alter Rebbe says doesn't make sense. It's hard. It's not easy. It's not so easy. And he goes one step further. He says fear of God might be a little bit easier. Because as we mentioned previously, fear, especially a low-level fear, fear of punishment, could be easy, but a love of God, now that's something difficult. The Alter Rebbe says to develop a love, that is difficult. However, we do know that tzaddikim, a tzaddik, does have complete control over his heart. But the problem is we are not tzaddikim, right? We do know that tzaddik has complete control of his heart. He loves Hashem, the fiery love, but we are not tzaddikim. So how can this apply to us? If the tzaddik has complete control of the heart, but it's hard for us to have complete control of the heart, right? What kind of a love is easy? that's what is going to explain, that's how the Alter Rebbe will explain to us why and how the Tvuna is easier and operates from an easier place than a full-blown emotion. Because obviously, Torah is eternal, and when Moshe Rabbeinu said this pasuk to the nation of Israel, he did not mean that it should only apply to that generation, but he did. Torah, being that Torah is eternal, it applies to each and every generation. So there must be some part of the controlling your heart which should be easy for us. That's over here the lesson, and the lesson in this chapter. Whoa, it is so amazing. Okay, so. Interestingly enough, just before we explain it, interestingly enough, we see that in this pasuk of Kikarev Elecha, that is very close to you, very attainable to you, fulfill Torah mitzvahs, when we usually speak about the three garments of the soul, we usually say them in the order thought, speech, and action, because usually thought comes before speech, comes before action, or in any case, that's the way it should be. A lot of people act before they think or before they speak, but the way it should be thought, speech, and action, simply because thought is the closest garment to the soul. It's not so revealed. Speech is more revealed, and then action is even further. It's separated from the person in actual fact. That's why it goes in that order. However, in this pasuk, we see that thought, speech, and action, the order is not like that. Beficha is speech, bilvavcha, which actually means your heart, but it is referring to the garment of thought, and we're gonna understand why now. But it is also the heart, and the emotions come next. So it's like speech, thought, and action. Speech, emotions, and action. That's the order. And the reason is because you don't need to have a full-blown, complete love of Hashem to serve him. A love of Hashem, which is enough to cause an action, which causes an action, is enough. That's why the heart comes right before the action. So therefore, even if the heart does not burn like a flaming fire, which is in the case of a tzaddik, it can still lead to action, which is the performance of the mitzvahs. And how does this work? And herein is the amazing practical lesson of this chapter of Tanya. A tzaddik is in complete control of his heart. A Beinoni, or a potential Beinoni, is in control of his mind. Now, this is something amazing. And it's so amazing that what I want to do is I'm going to read to you the English translation of the Alter Rebbe's words, and then we'll explain it. The Alter Rebbe's words are like this: the matter of arousing a love which remains hidden in the heart is very easy and very near to every man who has a brain in his head. That is the Alter Rebbe's words. For his mind is under his control, even if his heart is not. And with it, he can meditate as he pleases on any subject. If then he will contemplate with it on the greatness of the Almighty, he will inevitably generate, in his mind at least, a love of Hashem to cleave to him through the performance of his mitzvahs and the study of his Torah. So whereas we are not in control of our hearts, we are in control of our minds. And someone who thinks otherwise, that's not true. This is how Mayach Shalit al Halev happens, that the mind over the heart, the mind rules the heart happens. The mind has mastery over the left side of the heart, because remember that the right side of the heart comes from the divine soul. The left side of the heart, the animal soul, the mind has mastery over the left side of the heart, where desires for mundane and evil pleasures come from, which in turn affect action. Yes, Nomi is asking if I could snapshot the translation. I will snapshot it and put on the group afterwards. Okay, so that is lesson number 1 from this chapter, that we can control our minds and thus affect our emotions and in turn affect our actions. So obviously this goes back to what we've spoken about before about affirmations, and I just want to share with you a great affirmation that I discovered. I think I may have told it to somebody. I was watching the Gem video. I don't know if it was this past Motzei Shabbos or the last one. I think it was the last one. And the Rebbe speaks about gratitude in a sikha, and he brings a pasuk from the Navi. And I was like, wow, this is like an amazing thought, amazing affirmation, something to concentrate on. He brings the pasuk that Hashem tells the prophet, Terem yikra'u va'ani e'ene, oid he medabrim va'ani eshma, which means, before they call me, I answer. And while they are speaking, I am listening already. So which is an amazing, I could post that on the group as well. It's an amazing, amazing affirmation if anyone's interested. Obviously, there are 1,000,001 psukim that you could use. But in other words, when your mind is playing tricks on you, you can control your mind by thinking something else. And if that affects your action, well, that is the service of the Beinoni, which can affect action, meaning the performance of Torah mitzvahs. However, there is one exception, which is going to bring us to the second lesson in this chapter of Tanya. So, we are not tzaddikim, but we learn things from tzaddikim, which is why the Alter Rebbe brings the example of a tzaddik various times. We may not yet be a Beinoni. We are definitely potential Beinonis, right? We have the potential to become a Beinoni. But then we have the third category, which is the Rasha. Now, in the Rasha, if you remember, we spoke about Rasha, there being a complete Rasha and an incomplete Rasha. Most of us are on the level of incomplete Rasha, because an incomplete Rasha can actually be someone who majority of the time does mitzvahs, only very occasionally he will lapse into sin, but because the possibility of sin exists, he is considered, according to the Tanya, a Rasha, but no worries, he can become a Beinoni. However, there is a complete Rasha that exists, which I don't think anyone over here is a complete Rasha, but a complete Rasha is so far gone that he does not have any remorse for his sins. I don't know if you remember that. He doesn't have any remorse. The reason why incomplete Rasha, it's easier for him to become a Beinoni because he feels regret, and that regret pushes him to make changes in his life, right? But a complete Rasha is so far gone that right now he doesn't even he doesn't even have any remorse. He has, in other words, lost his mind. So in the case of the Beinoni, we can control our mind. What's happened now with this Rasha is that he's out of his mind. He's lost his mind. He cannot control his mind. He is under the control of his heart. His heart is controlling him. And in actual fact, the Rasha is not even governed anymore by the pleasure of sin. He's actually governed at this point in time by the habit of sin. He's so entrenched. In other fact, he's addicted to sin. He's actually addicted to sin. So what happens with this Rasha that just doesn't have any remorse? The pasuk ki karev elecha, that it is close and relevant and attainable to fulfill Torah mitzvahs with love in your heart and fear in your heart, and it should be easy. It actually doesn't apply to him, the Torah says, because such a Rasha is considered as if he is a dead person, and dead people don't serve Hashem. So Hashem is not even speaking to the Rasha. However, and here comes the next lesson in this chapter, nothing is ever lost. Nothing is ever lost. He is able to get out of the situation by doing tshuva. So let's take a step back, okay? The Rasha is under control of his heart, and his mind has no control over his heart whatsoever. The complete Rasha. So the tzaddik controls his heart. The Beinoni controls his mind and thus his heart. The Rasha is controlled by his heart. And actually, the Alter Rebbe tells us that this situation, that his mind cannot control his heart, is actually a punishment for his sins. Hashem has put him into that situation that he's so far gone that he can't even control his heart right now, right? Unless he does tshuva. And I will get to your question in a minute, Nomi, I see in the chat. Unless he does tshuva. And what causes him to do tshuva? Why does this Russia all of a sudden go do tshuva? So therein lies a beautiful lesson in this chapter. So when a person sins, what happens is that you unite your soul with klipa. What is klipa? Klipa are literally translated as negative forces, or it's translated as a shell. The translation of the word is a shell. Now, in the case of the Russia, he is so sinful, the complete Russia, he is so sinful and he's so entrenched in evil that his heart has formed a thick shell around it that the divine soul cannot penetrate at this moment. So as lofty and as godly as his divine soul is, this armor that he has created around his soul doesn't allow the divine light to penetrate. So what causes all of a sudden, what causes him to do tshuva? When he becomes broken-hearted. So I'm sure you've all heard the expression that there is nothing as complete as a broken heart, right? What actually does a broken heart mean? A broken heart means that finally this Russia has reached rock bottom, sees no way out, and becomes broken-hearted. His klipa, the shell, starts being broken into pieces. In other words, that's what a broken heart actually means. I'm not talking about a broken heart like that you're sad that a tragedy happened. I'm talking about the case of a broken heart where all of a sudden he realizes his situation, his matzav. He realizes, my goodness me, how far gone have I gone? I don't even know how to get out of this. I have no control whatsoever over my heart anymore. I'm in such a bad situation, and that is the starting point for him to do tshuva. And tshuva, as we know, starts off, and this parak Alter Rebbe tells starts off with a broken heart. When your heart, the layer, doesn't actually mean your heart is literally broken, but the layers around your heart, the klipa protecting your heart, are starting to be penetrated with the light of Hashem. So in actual fact, Hashem is helping you do tshuva. And what happens is that the Shekhinah, the presence of God, now becomes liberated in your heart, because previously in the Russia, the Shekhinah, which is the divine presence, is actually imprisoned within your body. Your body is the place of the animal soul, because the animal soul, we know, is found in the blood, right? It gives life to the body. But if the divine light cannot penetrate the heart, then the Shekhinah is trapped. It's imprisoned. That's the kind of expression we say. The Shekhinah is in golus. The Shekhinah is in exile. Whereas we usually use the expression for a general term that the Eibishter Hashem is with us in this exile, but in your own personal life, the Shekhinah can be in golus, can be entrapped. And when the Russia starts doing tshuva, because he's so remorseful and brokenhearted, the klipa is broken and the Shekhinah is redeemed. The arrogance is humbled, right? And the word tshuva actually is composed of two words, tashuv, hey. So there is a whole deeper explanation about the different letters in Hashem's name, but for now it's enough for us to know, tashuv, hey, Hashem is returning, which is actually a very happy occasion. So although the Shekhinah, the tshuva, process of tshuva starts off with brokenheartedness and remorse, we should not confuse this brokenheartedness with the guilt and shame that the Yetzer Hara puts on us, which keeps us entrapped in the same place, keeps us paralyzed. The guilt and the shame which causes brokenheartedness in the case of the Russia, which we learn from him, and it could be in different aspects in our lives too, is guilt and a shame enough to motivate change. It doesn't entrap us, doesn't enmesh us, doesn't keep us paralyzed. So before the Russia does tshuva, it is as if the Shekhinah is in golus. The divine spark, which is in the divine soul, which is in the soul, is drawn down into captivity, and the animal soul, which is enclosed in the body, when doing tshuva, rises once more. I'm just going to stop for 1 second. I'm just going to pause the recording. Okay, sorry, we're trying to direct traffic over here. Okay. So, in other words, there are two. Yes, Sina, unmute yourself so that you could ask a question.
You said, the last thing you said, The divine spark in the soul is drawn down into the captivity of the heart.
Yes, because the Rasha is in control of his heart.
Okay.
Rasha's control of the heart. And then when by the process of tshuva, the Shechina is able to rise up to its source once again, and thereby able to influence the heart instead of being entrapped by the heart. So basically, the two main lessons from this chapter is that, firstly, we are control of our minds. It's a very powerful statement because sometimes we think we're not, right? And the second lesson that we learned from this chapter is that a broken heart is sometimes a good thing. It's not always a bad thing. Sometimes a broken heart can be a healthy emotion because it's the start, it's the catalyst of getting closer to Hashem. Now, this is this chapter, and I do want to mention, because we're really on like the, close to Pesach, I thought that it would be appropriate to mention, we're talking about love and fear and of Hashem, and Tanya is all about giving us techniques how to develop a love of Hashem. There is a specific love that's very of Hashem that is very connected to Pesach, which Tanya brings like in about 20 chapters. But I do want to mention it today because I think it's so powerful to go into Pesach with this outlook. There is, lots of techniques that the Alter Rebbe gives us to produce and develop a love of Hashem. But towards the end of Tanya, the Alter Rebbe talks about a kind of love that we have for Hashem, which is a love that is reciprocal. In other words, it's like a mirror effect. Because Hashem loves us, we automatically love him. It's not like something produced from us, but it's because Hashem loves us. And the example that Tanya brings is actually the Yetzias Mitzrayim, how do you say the redemption from Egypt, right? The going out from Egypt. And the Alter Rebbe there brings a mashal, and a parable of a very downtrodden, good-for-nothing person who's basically stuck in a gutter, in the dirt, and the king passes by, and the king sees this person, and the king himself, he doesn't send his helpers, he doesn't give orders, he doesn't send his ministers. The king himself gets off from his horse, he comes down from his lofty place and his lofty level, and he lifts this man out of the gutter, and he brings this person, this downtrodden person, all the way to his palace. But it's not enough that he brings him just to the outer chambers. He brings him inside his intimate, private quarters to embrace him, to lift him up, to save him, basically. And the Alter Rebbe brings this mashal later on, but we're getting a sneak peek over here. And the Alter Rebbe says this is actually the parable of Yetzias Mitzrayim, because the nation of Israel were in a very downtrodden place, both spiritually, emotionally, and even physically. They were enslaved. They were not on a high level spiritually at all. And Hashem himself, we say this in the Haggadah, actually, when we were recounting the story of Egypt, we say Hashem himself. He didn't do it all through a malach, and he didn't do it through a saraf, and he didn't do it through any of his agents. He himself came down to save us. What a great love Hashem has for us, that he himself did this. He didn't do it because he had nothing else to do. He did it out of his great love. But what's the point? The Alter Rebbe continues in that chapter as well. So first of all, by reflecting on this, you could say, wow, Hashem loves us so much, therefore we have this reciprocal love for Hashem. But the thing is that we didn't go out of Egypt. I mean, maybe our souls did, but we didn't go out of Egypt. And therein lies the lesson, that in actual fact, every single one of us has an Egypt in our lives, because the word Mitzrayim comes from the word Meitzarim, which means limits. Everybody has challenges, daily, weekly, monthly, small challenges, big challenges, serious ones, not such serious ones. Maybe our mind plays tricks on us, tells us that a not so serious challenge is serious, whatever the case is. But daily, Hashem himself takes us out of that rut. Hashem himself takes us out of the gutter. It applies to every one of us, which is actually why one of the 6 remembrances that we say every single day is that we remember that God took us out of Egypt. Why do we do that? Because it applies to us every single day. We are going out of Egypt every single day. And when we reflect on that, when we see how Hashem has taken us out of our personal Mitzrayim, our personal limitations, we thereby automatically, it's not even a choice, we develop a reciprocal love for Hashem, and automatically our relationship becomes stronger. So it's like kind of like you know how they say today, like there are like some life hacks, this is like a hack to love of Hashem. When you reflect on what Hashem does for you, in your life, and you have gratitude for that, how he redeems you on a daily basis, you have just hacked love of Hashem, and therefore your mitzvahs are fueled even more, and you're able to focus on the positive in that way, and have what we say is a kosher and freilich and Pesach year round. So I just thought to bring that thought, even though it's not in this chapter of Tanya, but as it has to do with Pesach, I thought it would be nice to mention. Okay, so next week we're not going to have a class. Chol HaMoed also not, because it's actually Erev Yontif, but hopefully the week after that we'll be up and running. And the week after that, we're going to be doing chapter 18, which is actually a very pivotal chapter in Tanya about the hidden love that every Jew possesses. Any questions? Oh, let me just see. There was a question in the chat, actually. Can one be a Rasha in one deed? Like there is one thing he does wrong, he doesn't want to give up on, but other things he's struggling to be good. Of course. There's all kinds of, even a person who's almost a Beinoni or almost a tzaddik, he's still considered a Rasha because he has the capability of sinning. Of course. A Rasha could be a very good person, actually. Okay, any other comments or observations?
I just want to make one comment.
Yeah.
I loved the image of the broken heart and allowing through the cracks Hashem's light coming into it. It was so gorgeous. And it's like in my heart now, my brain. It's like, because I'm a visual person.
That's how the Alter Rebbe describes it. Because later on, actually, the Alter Rebbe will describe like a blockage of the heart, which basically is what the Rasha has. Something called Timtum Halev. It's a blockage of the heart. And in order to change that, the heart has to become broken.
Sorry. What I was trying to ask with my last question was, if somebody is in one department, they have one taiva that they're having a hard time giving up. So if they're Rasha just there, but everything else, they're really, they're Rasha, but they're trying to do the right thing all the time, etc., etc. So if there's one mitzvah that categorizes them as a bad Rasha, one who's not even trying, but the rest of his life he is trying, what does that one Avera make him fall into a complete baddie, or someone
none of us are completely bad. A completely bad Rasha is mamish, somebody who doesn't have any good in him. So right. No one is in that category, even if one area of your life you're struggling. However, we can learn from the complete Rasha how to deal with that one area. So are you, like, a lot of people compare the state of this Rasha who is maybe struggling in one area to an addict. An addict sometimes needs somebody else's help to get to rise from that. He's beyond the point of being able to help himself. A regular Rasha, a potential Beinoni, is able to help themselves.
But if he's an addict and he is searching for the right answers, then he's already.
So he should keep searching. He should keep at it. I mean, he should get probably professional help to help him along the way. Yeah. But that professional help in and of itself will help break the shell. Will like
Okay,
make
so
him
it's
because
not all
an
in one
addict, for
basket.
example, if you take an addict who has no remorse, right, and he'll reach rock bottom and he'll go to professional help, the first thing he'll tell the therapist is that it's not my fault. Blame everybody else but himself. Right? It takes
Right.
a while for the person to come to the conclusion, oh, actually, this is my problem and I have to deal with it. When he's had that breakthrough, that's when the heart is broken. Yes,
Right.
Sina.
Interestingly enough, this morning I read in the Hayom Yom, it was talking about how when the Rebbe started the mitzvah tanks and that there was a lot of opposition to it because people said, oh no, we can't have people putting on tefillin. They have to first learn about God, learn about why they're doing. And the Rebbe, of course, Baruch Hashem, the Rebbe, of course, reacted that and said, no, first, let them put on the tefillin. And we see today how many people that awakened, just the matter of putting on the tefillin, awakened their hearts, and then they grew that love. It's exactly what you're saying and exactly what this is saying.
Exactly. Exactly. And we spoke about this last week as well. We spoke about it. In other words, this whole concept of tavuna doesn't let anybody off the hook. It doesn't matter if you don't have a full-blown emotion. We don't wait for a person to love Hashem completely and then put on tefillin. No, you're right. First, you do the action. And by the way, this pasuk, Kikarev elecha hadavar ma'od, is all about action. The last word in this pasuk is la'asaisai. So it doesn't matter if you have a full-blown emotion and you don't do mitzvahs. You didn't serve Hashem. But if you have just a conviction in your heart or an intellectual feeling and it changes your actions, you did a mitzvah, you were able to withstand your desires, you're able to do complete the desires of Hashem, fulfill the desires of Hashem, that's enough. You're right.
I'm not right. The Hayom Yom is
Yeah, the Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe, exactly. Exactly.